And so for me, I thought crypto was a space at the time that still had not achieved mainstream. I had a fundamental understanding of it being a finance major. My parents, my dad and my sisters being engineers, and sort of understanding the shift between a system that has let people down, which is a human-based system, and a system that was algorithmic and open-sourced, which could provide what is missing in modern-day society, which is trust, right? We don't trust our politicians. We don't trust their decisions. We don't trust, the media. We don't trust the truth. And so how do you restore that trust? You do it in a way where you design something that you don't manipulate.
This is Office Hours, and I'm your host, Spencer Raskoff. I co-founded Zillow and ran it for a decade. And in early 2020, I co-founded .la, the preeminent news service covering the tech scene in my hometown of Los Angeles. On this show, you'll hear from founders, CEOs, and thought leaders from around the world with a focus on the innovators in LA. Mayor Francis Suarez is an American lawyer and politician serving as the 43rd mayor of Miami. Suarez is the first ever local-born Miami mayor and is the son of former Miami mayor and former Miami-Dade County Commissioner Xavier Suarez. Mayor Suarez earned his bachelor's degree in finance from Florida International University. He went on to receive his law degree from the University of Florida, where he graduated cum laude. He's currently an attorney with the law firm Greenspoon Martyr, specializing in corporate and real estate transactions. Mayor Suarez serves as the chair of the Environmental Committee, as well as the advisory board on the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And in these capacities, he's taken a leading role in collaborating with fellow mayors around the country to preserve the environment and develop programs and policies that benefit the city of Miami. Mayor Suarez, it's amazing to have you here. Thank you for sitting down for Office Hours.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege to be over here in LA poaching your best and your finest.
We're going to get to that. Yeah. So welcome to LA. Let's start there, actually. I love the billboard that you took out in San Francisco.
Yes.
That said, thinking of moving to Miami, DM me. I mean, this is just brilliant. Political theater, cities jousting for each other's tech workers and business community. First of all, did anyone DM you? And what did you tell them? What pitch Miami?
So thousands of people DM me. Amazing. It was we actually had to create an office to deal with all the DMs, which we call Venture Miami. I call it the back office, right? It was very evident to me quickly that it was going to overwhelm my ability to respond specifically to DMs. And I'll tell you a real quick funny story about it. The person who runs Masterclass, who is sort of the longtime boyfriend of Christina Aguilera, they were filming a music video in Miami. And he says, I got to meet this mayor of Miami because I have hired all these high-paid former Nike executives, and we're in a marketing meeting, and all they talk about is this guerrilla marketing campaign that the mayor of Miami has done in San Francisco with this billboard. What I identified was a moment where I saw, an opportunity for a city like Miami to do something that was counter narrative. And the counter narrative was, as we were seeing American cities, big American cities, push away innovators, famously in New York, pushing out Amazon headquarters too, famously in San Francisco, saying F Elon Musk and him writing back, message received and leaving Austin. I just thought that there was an opportunity for me to lean into what other cities were leaning out of. And as someone who was exiled from, my family was exiled from our country of birth in Cuba, where a leader there said, hey, just give me all your property, give me all your businesses, and don't worry, I'll make everybody equal. And he delivered equality all right, equal misery for everybody. And so I realized that government as a logical extension of problem solving to solve all societal problems breaks down, doesn't work. It's not a good economic system. It's not a good societal system. And so for us, we're fundamentally free market in Miami. And so we wanted to be a counter narrative. We wanted to roll out the red carpet. And so with Venture Miami, we did just that. We answered every message from, creating a podcast of our own to tell the Miami story and putting people on it that were building the narrative to how do you domicile? How do you get your driver's license? We would stand in line for somebody for a driver's license if we had to. Where do you locate as an office? What kind of incentives are there? So we wanted to create sort of a C-suite concierge service for people who wanted to build our economy. And the KPIs on that are we're number one in the nation in tech job growth since then. We're number one in tech job migration. We're number one in wage growth. And we were named by Financial Times as the most important city in America. So I think our efforts have been successful at trying to create prosperity for our citizens.
So today, it's obvious that this strategy that you started 2+ years ago, maybe more, is bearing fruit. And of course, there's been this crypto tailwind as well, which Miami has benefited from. But when you made that first decision a couple of years ago to say, I'm all in on tech, was that a risky political decision? Were you concerned that there'd be people in your base or others in the electorate in Miami that would say, well, hold on, wait a minute, this would change the composition of the community, or any other political issues you are concerned with?
My view at the time was, that the world was changing rapidly and that there were some massive disruptions, one of which was this change from an industrial economy to a digital economy. At the same time as there was another massive disruptive event, which is a generational change from the baby boomer generation to my generation. When you combine those two disruptive events, it created what I consider to be a tsunami of opportunity. And for me, it wasn't even really a choice. I didn't think that I had the luxury of being able to choose. I felt like I had to, it's a little bit like to use an analogy in biblical terms, like Moses leading his people out of Egypt, and trying to cross the Red Sea. You realize you've got to get to the other side because there's no other option. It's like you perish if you stay, or you survive if you go. And so I realized that was the only path. And so I knew it was going to be at times difficult. I knew that there would be people that would try to create counter narratives on my counter narrative, right? Like say that we're doing X or Y or Z. I knew that was all going to happen. It's just the nature of politics. There's no one's just going to, they're not just going to be like, oh, the mayor's so great and everybody loves me at all times. But I was blessed. One big moment of validation for me was last November. So this all started, February of 2020. I'm sorry, December of 2020. In November of 2021 was my reelection. And if there was ever a moment where Miamians could have said, "Hey, look, we're not on board with this,"
and take credit, what were you reelected with?
I was reelected by 78%.
I mean, which is nearly unprecedented. I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, it's never. I don't think it's my two elections. I don't think have ever happened in the history of our city. And I think part of the reason why that happened is because I'm the first mayor of Miami in the 125-year history of the city that was actually born in the city. So I think and why is that important? Because when you're born in a city becomes part of your soul, right? It's part of the fabric of who you are. It's part of your being. And I think that allows me to stay very closely connected to my city, even if I'm like in LA, for example, or in the Middle East, or now I'm president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So I'm president of all the mayors in the country. So my responsibility is national and international. I'm still tethered to the city that I love, that I was born in and that I was raised in.
So, crypto has benefited Miami, and the two, in the tech industry's mind, the two are inextricably linked from a brand standpoint.
Sure.
Why is that? Why is crypto important to Miami, and why, as mayor, have you embraced it?
So I'm going to stick with the Old Testament again, and I'm going to use another Old Testament story, which is David and Goliath. And what David did in the story was that he hacked his way to victory, right? He realized he was competing against a superior opponent, right? Strength, will, and he had an uphill battle. And so he had to find a technology that would allow him to leverage his intelligence as a means of winning the battle. And so for me, I thought crypto was a space at the time that still had not achieved mainstream. I had a fundamental understanding of it being a finance major. My parents, my dad and my sisters being engineers, and sort of understanding the shift between a system that has let people down, which is a human-based system, and a system that was algorithmic and open-sourced, which could provide what is missing in modern-day society, which is trust, right? We don't trust our politicians. We don't trust their decisions. We don't trust, the media. We don't trust the truth. And so how do you restore that trust? You do it in a way where you design something that you don't manipulate, right? And I think that is where trust breaks down, is when the decisions are made ex post facto and people believe that they're being done for reasons that are other than the best interest of the community.
Do you worry that if the bloom comes off the rose on crypto, that your personal brand is becoming linked to it, and how might that impact you politically?
I have people all the time ask me that question, including my dad. And the other day I was actually showing him an article about how mayors in the crypto space, how they're benefiting politically as opposed to it being a political detriment. I think it's a more fundamental question. I think the fundamental question is, should you pay a price for being an innovator? Should you pay a price for wanting to push the envelope and create generational opportunities, generational wealth, deal with things like income inequality if it doesn't work out, or if a particular idea doesn't work out? And I think the answer should be no, right? I think the answer should be, by our society, we want our leaders to lead. We want our leaders to innovate. We want our leaders to push the envelope. It's not always going to work in every single context, in every single situation. but the cumulative effort of pushing the envelope will get us to a better place. And I think that's the lesson to be learned there.
I am deeply committed to the LA tech ecosystem. I do love
Sorry
Miami.
to hear that.
That's all right. I love Miami. I'm a lifelong Dolphins fan.
Amen. Torturous existence.
It has been a hard time since the early 80s.
Yes.
But
Dan Marino.
Nevertheless, to me, when I look at the LA tech ecosystem, it has all these vibrant elements. It has a founder community. It has big tech companies. It has venture capital. It has the media and entertainment industry. One thing it lacked was journalism, which is why I started .LA to try to tell the stories of LA tech. Describe for listeners the Miami tech ecosystem from your vantage point.
Well, the Miami tech ecosystem, I think, is the hottest ecosystem in the world. We have moved in the last 18 months $2 trillion in AUM companies. We've grown our VC pipeline by 200%. And to put that number in context, if we were to grow by 200%, which is hypergrowth, for 2 more consecutive years, and it was a zero-sum game between us and San Francisco, we would overtake San Francisco in 2 years as the venture capital of the world. So our growth rate is accelerated. And why is that happening? It's happening because what Miami always lacked was critical mass. We had great weather. We had a great tax environment. We were a very international city. Those were things that were always present. What we missed or what we were lacking was a critical mass of doers that could make deals happen. Now with the AUM that we've moved with the companies like, Blackstone and, and Starwood and, all the companies that we've moved, D1 Capital, you talked about Keith Rabois and Founders Fund and Keith himself. It's just been Orlando Bravo, CI Financial, $256 billion Canadian fund. I mean, it's just been an embarrassment of riches in a way. And it's created an inevitability about Miami. I call it the FlyMo effect, right? So it's a flywheel plus FOMO, fear of missing out combined, right? When you have everybody migrating to a particular place and you have a confluence of capital like what we have, which is the PE world combining with the VC world, which has never happened anywhere on the planet, you're going to get a different models for investment. And so my view of this sort of disruptive nature of the world is we want to be the center of capital aggregation and deployment. And that's our goal. I call it the capital of capital or the epicenter of capital. And that's what we're focusing on because we think we want to be the place where if you want to create a company and scale it, there's no better place in the world to come to.
Are there enough engineers there?
Well, we're number one in tech job migration. And I would say, Palo Alto is a great example. 95% of the people who live in Palo Alto were not born in Palo Alto. Mm-hmm. They all came from somewhere else. So I think talent goes where there's the ability to scale. Talent goes to places where they think they can grow. And so Miami's not like a bad value proposition. We're not telling them to go to Siberia, right? Because all the capital's there. We're telling them to go to this incredible place with incredible weather, incredible infrastructure, incredible culture, incredible sports. And oh, by the way, it's the best place to scale.
And I mean, the confluence of factors coming out of COVID have been so advantageous, right? You've got
Absolutely.
People realizing that they're untethered from their headquarters. So all the New Yorkers can now finally move to Florida, obviously the tax benefits as well.
No doubt.
And then people don't have to live in the Bay Area anymore. And LA has been a big beneficiary of this as well. The diaspora coming out of the Silicon Valley is benefiting Austin, Miami, Los Angeles, really everyone except San Francisco. If COVID hadn't happened, where do you think Miami would be in terms of its status as a tech capital?
So I think it would not be where it is, frankly. I think you've identified one of the major macro factors that accelerated it. I think we've done a 20-year build in 24 months. And that is in part because of these disruptive events, right? We had the SALT deduction going away, a massive macro disruption. You had, like you said, COVID on the being open as opposed to other places being closed and remote work phenomenon, which helped create that critical mass. And then I think you had a mayor, not to toot my own horn, but you had a mayor that was rolling out the red carpet. So, at the end of the day, fundamentally, I hear a lot of people say, I didn't move because of the taxes. I've moved because I didn't feel wanted in the place where I lived. I felt like I was a pariah. And I've come here and people, they want me to build. They want me to try to solve societal problems. They want me to create high paying jobs. There isn't a guilt associated with success. And I think, unfortunately, in a lot of American cities, they've lost sight of the American dream, right? Which is that we all have a notion of what that means for us, that American dream. And we shouldn't feel guilty about it. We shouldn't make other people feel guilty about it. We should lean into it. Doesn't mean we're not compassionate. Doesn't mean we don't take care of people. Doesn't mean we don't realize that people start at a different starting line and that there are things that we can do to create more fairness and that we all have a more obligation to do that. And the government can't solve all of it. I think there's a lack of humility. sometimes in people who think that government is a solution to every problem. Government has proven over time to be very bad at solving problems, right? It can do a few things well and in its core competencies. And then we have to let the private sector, the NGOs, the religious organizations, and society generally all come together as a community with a moral purpose to try to make our world better.
You are the son of a mayor. Your father was mayor for much of the 80s and 90s. What did you learn from him?
Wow. I mean, so many things. I learned about courage in the face of adversity. I learned about positivity and the power of positivity and understanding that you can always look at the glass as half empty or half full, and that's a volitional decision that you make in life, and that oftentimes defines how the rest of your day goes. He's the most idealistic person that I know. He's also one of the most intelligent people that I know. He came to this country with nothing at 12 years old, got a full scholarship to high school, presidential scholarship to the university that he attended. They give one a year. Graduated Summa Mechanical Engineering, got 2 graduate degrees from Harvard and MPP-JD, has written 8 or 9 books and speaks 5 languages. So
not bad.
So he is the prototypical American success story of an immigrant who just worked hard, studied, played by the rules, and was a family man. And so I've learned, and I continue to learn from him. He's a source of inspiration. He's a source of advice, certainly. And he's one of my best friends.
Did you rub in his face at all your re-election numbers compared with what his were? I mean,
it was a different time back then. In the 80s, there were like these titanic. His generation was very politically active, and I think what happened was they were traumatized by their experience in Cuba, and they realized how a lack of democracy, what can result from that, and so they were hyper involved in the democratic process. In fact, some of them are still in office right now. And I think my generation, unfortunately, because they weren't the sons of politicians, they kind of like said, hey, we're going to make money. We'll let you guys run the government, right? And I think that's a big mistake. So I think he had much more difficult battles than I did. And there were some fun elections back in the day.
In our last couple of minutes, let's shift to national politics for a moment. What does it mean to you to be a Republican?
What it means to me to be an American is more important than what it means to me to be a Republican. I think, we live in a world now where people want to label you and then put you in a box and then make a decision about you. And I think that's a problem in our country. I think for me, I like to focus on the things that unite us. And what are those things? And I've traveled the world and I've learned that no matter your ideology, no matter your culture, no matter your ethnic background, people want the same, no matter what language you speak, people want the same things, the same 3 things. They want prosperity for themselves and their children. They want to live in peace and harmony, and they want their tomorrow to be better than their yesterdays. It's that simple. And I think everything else is meant to divide us, oftentimes for financial reasons. So for me, as someone who affiliates with the Republican Party and has been a Republican since I was 18 years old, there are some principles that I completely lean into and agree with, like national defense, like low taxes, like free market and free enterprise. And I think that there are opportunities for leadership on climate, on immigration. And it's exciting to think about what a new generation of political leader can be like, that can be inspirational and aspirational, as opposed to someone who thinks that the way to win is to divide and conquer, right? And, which frankly, for me, like I said, and I don't know if I said it in this interview or not, is what our enemies want. That's what North Korea wants. That's what Russia wants. That's what all our enemies, they want us to be divided. That is the weakest point for a democracy.
Mayor Suarez, thank you for being an advocate for tech and for being an incredibly popular mayor of Miami. It's been amazing to watch from afar and somewhat jealously, because I think LA and Miami are both jockeying for who's going to take the mantle from the Bay Area as the leading tech capital.
Well, I think it shouldn't be necessarily competitive. It should be collaborative. And I think if we all believe that innovation is a positive thing in our cities, then I think our country's stronger. And I just want to thank you.
Thank you very much.
You got it.
That's it for this episode of Office Hours. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm your host, Spencer Raskoff. If you could leave a rating or review for the podcast, I'd greatly appreciate it. And always feel free to tweet at me on Twitter. That's @Spencer Raskoff. This episode was edited by George Macharko of The Podcast Editor. You can hear more Office Hours by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram @Spencer Raskoff, all one word. See you next time, and thanks for listening.